Welcome to LawNext PR, the podcast where we put a spotlight on the latest news coming out of the legal tech industry. This is Bob Ambrogi, and in each sponsored episode of LawNext PR, I interview a legal tech company about its just released news or latest developments. Today we're going to be talking about a new tool for propounding discovery requests introduced by the legal tech company Briefpoint. And joining me to discuss this new feature is Nathan Walter, the CEO and co-founder of Briefpoint. Nathan, good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Bob.
So before we dive into exactly what this new feature does, for those who may not be familiar, why don't you give us an overview of Briefpoint and what you do?
Yeah, so Briefpoint drafts discovery responses and discovery requests. It's an out-of-the-box solution where you basically go to briefpoint.com, you create an account, and you draft your propounding and responding discovery. It's very user-friendly. We're not changing the world, but we are laser-focused on propounding and responding discovery, and our goal is to remove that work from litigation just entirely, basically.
And I'm always interested to know, because I know that you were a litigator earlier in your career, what was it that led you to want to give that up and do this?
Well, I drafted a discovery response and I wanted to die. So there was a large demand for it. But I practiced for 5 years. I was on the West Coast, spent some time with Buchalter, which is sort of a West Coast law firm. And as a litigator, I was inspired to do Briefpoint because of a mediation I had one day where basically very small room mediation, you're trying to negotiate a settlement before having attorney's fees accrue. And as an associate, I think I was a fourth or fifth year associate at the time, I knew the facts of the case and I knew my opposing party had no case. And they were just trying to get some money out of this borderline frivolous lawsuit.
Shocked, I say.
Yeah, which never happens every time. And the opposing counsel was, arguing, and he was going crazy. And then at one point he said, well, my client would never agree to that. And then I showed him an email on this big binder. I knew exactly what he was going to say. I showed him the email where his client, the smoking gun email basically. And the opposing counsel legitimately started crying in the mediation room. And he was saying like, oh, I've, worked so hard on this case. And I was looking at my partner like, what is happening right now? This guy is a lunatic. And he gathered himself and said, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go to court. I'm going to bang my fist on the table. And it's going to cost you so much to defend me that this $100,000 I'm asking for is going to be nothing. And that was infuriating, but he was right. So he left with that money. And it was incredibly frustrating for me. And I was already sort of been involved in tech in the first AI wave with technology-assisted review. And I thought, there's got to be a way where we can automate some of these rote tasks in litigation so that my clients can defend themselves for longer on the defense side. And then on the plaintiff side, you can take on less or more risky cases because the potential financial exposure to use is lessened. So I started teaching myself coding, and the goal was to take out the edge or dull the edge of a common bleed dry tactic, which in litigation is often discovery. And that's what we set out doing. And I started building this platform. And then once I realized that there was a real way to actually eliminate this work in totality, I left my firm and I started building Briefpoint. And that's our goal. We're just trying to make litigation less financially ruinous for clients while also making the work life of a litigator better because they don't need to do this really boring work.
So what I've known of Briefpoint up until now has seemed to me to have been primarily focused on responding to discovery requests. Upload a discovery request, generate the kind of the rote responses that can be created, and leave the attorney to then fill in what needs to be done beyond that. But this new feature that you're talking about today really enables litigators to also propound requests, right? So can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been really exciting. So our discovery response module has been out since June of 2022. And we spent the last year fine-tuning different AI models to generate this propounding update, where now what you can do is upload a pleading PDF, maybe a complaint, an answer, a cross-complaint, or really, honestly, any document. It could be a deposition summary. And then our 10 different systems will analyze that document. It will then generate a set of requests for admissions, a production demand, a request for production, and interrogatories all in one go. And it's actually really high quality work, because one of those systems that we have is our objection identification system. So when you're responding to discovery, Briefpoint will automatically review every request and lodge objections to those requests. And this is based on 230,000 samples of attorneys objecting to requests. So it sort of acts like an attorney objecting. We took that model, that system, and we now have it review every propounding set or every propounding request. And whenever it identifies an objection like overbroad, privileged, ambiguous, it will then rewrite the request to evade the objection. So what we're getting are these propounding discovery sets that are designed to defeat or lessen the likelihood of objection, so that you can get your information from the opposing party without having to dive into a large, drawn-out discovery dispute, which if you think discovery is bad, motions to compel is even worse, because everybody hates that. Judges hate it. Nobody wants to do it. It's pedantic. And so we wanted to make a product that actually inherently had sort of protocols or some way to lessen the likelihood of any sort of dispute.
That's really interesting. So you're effectively taking some of what you've learned from creating responses to discovery requests in order to fine-tune, and I don't mean in the sort of technical way, but fine-tune the process of generating discovery requests.
Exactly. Yes. And this is sort of our long-term product philosophy, where we look at the adversarial nature of litigation, and whenever we generate and will generate new documents, we first train an AI to behave like an attorney or a judge, if we have the data for that, in making counter arguments. And so we have this product that does counter arguments to some argument. And then once we have that really just nailed down, then when we generate the arguments, we have the counter argument system refine those to increase quality. And that's like something that a lot of AI companies, they just talk about, like efficiency gain. Well, using this adversarial process, we're able to also increase quality and reduce likelihood of disputes, given that we're sort of training it to avoid disputes, right?
Right. So I think it goes without saying, but you have actually said it, that this is using AI in order to generate these requests. So, I mean, could you talk a little bit more about how you're using AI here?
Yeah, so we're using fine-tuned models where, and the fine-tuned models are based on court documents that we've spent. I mean, my docket alarm receipt is about 400 pages long. But we use downloaded court documents. We use data we've purchased from law firms. We don't use any user data or anything or any work product like that. Not that, we need to necessarily, but also we want to make sure our users are comfortable using our product. So we just don't touch that. And often we can find sufficient things on court websites, but that often involves like manually downloading documents from court websites, which is a task I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But regardless, the fine-tuned models are mostly GPT models. So we have 3.5, GPT 4.0. We also have other AI models that help with document processing. So we're using like Google and some computer vision stuff. And this is all in the background. Our users are not prompt engineers. It's all in the background, and it happens all at the same time. And the AI that we use is not drafting everything all at once. Rather, we find that these large language models today are really good at specific tasks. And when you specify the task for a large language model to make it smaller, you also greatly reduce the likelihood of hallucination. We also don't generate citations using any large language model, so there really are no hallucinations to begin with because we're not that ambitious.
Right. And for the attorney using this, that you create this set of discovery documents for them. What control do they have over those documents after you've generated them or during the process of generating them?
Yeah, so we show them, when propounding discovery, the first thing we show them is all the information we're going to use to generate the discovery. So they upload a complaint, for example, and then we break that out into every cause of action, the document type, every single injury. We show them a timeline of the event, all the allegations, and they can review and control that information to the extent, maybe there was something that they want to ask questions about that wasn't in the document. Well, they can add that in. And so we show them we break out the steps we take so that they can have control there. And then on the output document, or the output before it's even put into Word, they can see a sort of map of the actual requests themselves. They can remove things. They can add in things. Like, one thing they can add is their standard discovery. If they have standard discovery, they can just drag and drop that. So they have their standard questions and then the tailored questions additionally. So we give them a lot of control before it gets to Word, and then when it's in Word, it is just a Word document, so they can make tweaks. But we want to make it really easy for them to review and ensure everything is up to their standards of quality before giving them a document, because the last thing we want is someone to just click a button, get a document in Word, serve it on opposing counsel, and then realize something was not generated to what they wanted, and that we take steps to ensure that.
Yeah. Different states have different styles and other requirements around filing discovery documents. How do you address those differences among the states?
Yeah, no, all 50 states and DC. So it is. Yeah, they do, Bob.
I think I hit a sore spot for you there.
Oh my God. Yeah. So that is something that we've spent a ton of time on, and it is crazy. So every document is formatted pursuant to local state drafting rules. Fine. Those rules are publicly available. We can make that happen. But that doesn't really tell you what the document actually looks like at all. The attorneys have customs. In Indiana, for example, at the top margin on the first caption page, there's a SS : / and then there's some words. And that's on every document. No one can tell me why that's there. It's some artifact from the typewriting era, likely, but it's just, there's these customs and traditions that have been passed down in every state that is just used because that's what you need to do to make your document look like you're from that state. And so we've actually taken crazy, painstaking attention to detail steps to ensure that every document generated by Briefpoint is formatted pursuant to that state's formatting rules and customs. And this is down to the pixel. This is kind of like a boring thing to talk about, but in Texas, for example, they have the T : and then the telephone number under the attorney. And this is Times New Roman 12. And then they have the F : fax number. Well, Times New Roman 12F and Times New Roman 12T are 1 pixel difference, where the F is 1 pixel shorter. So the colons are 1 pixel misaligned if you just use Times New Roman 12 for each. So we had to find a new font for the F, and so that it looks like Times New Roman 12, but is exactly aligned with the T on the Texas documents. And we took that level on every single state. And yeah, that's it's not the most exciting work, but once we've coded it in, when you get a document for Briefpoint, the idea is you don't need to tweak the formatting or anything, because that's like sort of the process of document generation.
If the goal is to save lawyers time, you don't want them to then have to go back and reformat the whole darn thing and all of that after they get the document. And of course, all of this does end up in Word, and they can make any changes or edits or whatever at that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if the goal that you set out to achieve is to reduce the amount of time that lawyers spend on propounding or responding to discovery documents, how much time do you save lawyers?
So it depends on the complexity of the document. So if we're looking at an RFA response, that's about a 99% time save, because we can get all that content out. If we're looking at a request for production, we're not doing document review. So the actual workflow that emanates or is sort of caused by a request for production with document review, we don't even touch that. But if you're looking at the actual document itself, we can reduce the time by hours per document easily. Really, honestly, you're probably saving 7/8 of your time. So users will say it took them 1/8 of the time it would normally take. But because we're really going over all this rote stuff, and you can get these documents, by the way, within 45 seconds of your first sign-in. You can have a document that's ready to serve. So we're seeing huge time saves. And the reason we're seeing huge time saves is because we're so focused on like these one document types, so like we like sort of nailed those things.
Yeah. And what's it going to cost me as a lawyer to use this?
We start at $89 a month. So, we really are used often by small solo firms. We have some medium-sized firms and all that, but people use Briefpoint, especially when they either can't find sufficient support staff to do this work for them, or they're having trouble finding paralegal work. So we find people that are in smaller law firms using Briefpoint, so our pricing is fit for that market.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up here today?
Sure. Oh yeah, Briefpoint's free to try, by the way, so you can test it for free. If you go to Briefpoint and click Get Started, there's no credit card required. We don't wait for you not to cancel to charge you or anything like that. Totally free to try. So if you're interested at all, please give it a shot.
It's briefpoint.ai, not briefpoint.com.
Yes.
So go to Briefpoint.
Oh, briefpoint.com. We own that domain name.
Oh, okay.
Too, so
go wherever you
want
want with the word Briefpoint in it then.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Nathan, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and hear about this new development.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate the time. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, that does it for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube, or at LawNext_PR on YouTube. And you can also find all the episodes on the LawNext Legal Tech directory under the Resources tab. This is Bob Ambrogi. Thanks so much for listening.